All right, we're going to talk about algebra functions today. So algebra functions, so this is read f of g of x. That's going to be f of x plus g of x. And then we're going to look at the domain of each of those. This is f minus g of x. That's going to be f of x minus g of x. F times g of x, f of x times g of x. And then f over g of x equals f of x over g of x, where g of x cannot equal 0. So here we have our two quantities here. F of x equals x plus 1. G of x equals the square root of x plus 3. Now when we look at this first one, f of x, we should see that that domain is going to be all reals, right? This is a line. There isn't a value of x that will give me a non-real value. G of x does have some domain restrictions though. So I can't take the square root of negative numbers. So the inside of this has to be 0 or greater, which is going to force my x values to be greater than or equal to negative 3. So now I have f of x. So I have f of x plus g of x. That's going to be x plus 1 plus the square root of x plus 3. And my domain now is going to be based off of my g of x. So x is greater than or equal to negative 3. If I were to write this in interval notation, it would look like that. Okay, now we have the subtraction. F of x minus g of x. This is going to be x plus 1 minus the square root of x plus 3. And once again, my domain is x is greater than or equal to negative 3. So I'm writing it as an interval here. And then I have the product, f of x times g of x. And I'm just going to put parentheses around these. X plus 1 times the square root of x plus 3. Our domain now, no domain restrictions, domain restrictions. So we have that x is greater than or equal to negative 3 to infinity. And then our last one, f of x over g of x, that's going to equal x plus 1 over the square root of x plus 3. Now right here, I'm going to look at my domain restrictions. I'm not going to leave it in this form, but I want to talk about domain restrictions real quick. So we know that the square root has to be greater than or equal to negative 3. So our x has to be greater than or equal to negative 3. But the problem is we also, because we're in a fraction, cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So the value that makes this 0 in the denominator is negative 3. So now my domain restriction changes from being greater than or equal to negative 3 to being strictly greater than. And so now my interval is going to change to parentheses. Now, I don't want to leave this with the square root in my denominator. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of x plus 3. That's going to give me x plus 1 times the square root of x plus 3 all over x plus 3. Okay. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is understanding function notation and kind of applying it in this setting here. So I have f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So we're going to plug in x plus h in here, and then we're going to subtract off f of x. So I'm going to do that now. So 2 times x plus h minus 3 minus, now I'm going to put this whole thing in parentheses, 2x minus 3 all over h. Okay? So now I'm just going to do some distribution here. So I have 2x plus 2h minus 3. I'm going to distribute my negative sign, minus 2x plus 3 all over h. I'm going to simplify. Notice that there's positive 2x and a negative 2x, and a negative 3 and a positive 3. So I end up with 2h over h, which simplifies down to 2. Okay. Now the second one is a little harder because I do have a larger function up there, more terms, so to speak. So I have 3 terms up here. So now when I plug this in, I have 2 times the quantity x plus h squared minus x plus h minus 3 minus, now I'm going to put this whole thing in a parentheses by itself. 2x squared minus x minus 3 all over h. Okay? So it's very easy to accidentally forget one of these, so just be careful when you're working. So now I'm going to kind of multiply this out, distribute, kind of get it in so I just have terms. So if you remember, x plus h quantity squared is going to give me x squared plus 2xh plus h. And then I'm going to multiply that by 2. So that's going to give me 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared. I'm going to distribute my negative sign here, minus x minus h minus 3. I'm going to distribute my negative sign here, minus 2x squared plus x plus 3 all over h. Okay? Now I'm going to just kind of cancel things out up here. So I notice that I have a 2x squared and a negative 2x squared, so those cancel out. I have a negative x and a positive x, and then a negative 3 and a positive 3. And so now I have 4xh plus 2h squared minus h all over h. Notice they all have an h in common, so I'm going to cancel those out. 4x plus 2h minus 1. And there's my finished product. So that's kind of our algebra of functions. We want to make sure you understand all these different pieces here: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, function notation, placing different quantities inside of the f of x.